Welcome back. All right, so the power rankings gonna be a little bit different tonight than normal. I just thought I'd have fun with it. So Yvonne will be playing my Vanna for tonight, and I did give her a suggestion for which jerseys we wear because teams that are moving up the power rankings are the jerseys that usually I would wear for a power rankings video. So 32 through 1, you guys know how this all works and everything. So let's go ahead and jump in with number 32 this week, dropping 4 spots from last week. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's had a rough time of it. There's been discussion of whether or not they're going into a rebuild. The reality is they probably need one. And tonight they did get that shootout win over the Sharks, but they were ahead by 2 goals on the Sharks. They had to use the shootout to win that. It just doesn't inspire a lot of belief that this team is going to start putting wins together. And now that I've said it, now they will. So you're welcome. Number 31 this week. Moving up 1 spot from last week. Do not let it go to your heads. Montreal, moving up to 31. The win over Columbus tonight did cause them to move up past Pittsburgh. Those two teams very close to each other in terms of points and all that other fun stuff. So, yeah, the Montreal Canadiens are number 31 this week, just moving up the 1 spot from last week. And I didn't think Montreal and Pittsburgh would be at the bottom of the board this year. It's a surprise. Number 30. Moving up 1 spot from last week. Chicago. The Blackhawks, they did beat Minnesota, so that's a win over a top team, and I don't see any reason to bust them down. I thought about it tonight. Like, I was thinking, well, I might be able to argue Chicago 32nd, but they did have that win over Minnesota. They've been playing okay. They could use more goals from Bedard. I'm surprised he didn't get him against Vancouver tonight, but when you're getting checked as closely as he is, it's kind of hard to get that room out there. So he'll fight his way through it. The guy's a star. But yeah, Chicago number 30 this week. Number 29, dropping 3 spots from last week. Nashville. So another yellow puck near the bottom of the board. Nashville, of course, we know they've had struggles. They're actually at the bottom of the standings right now. This was not expected of Nashville. So of the 4 teams that are on the board, there's one that doesn't surprise me in Chicago. The other 3 do. I'm still waiting on Nashville to start getting some wins because Saros is playing really, really well. And that's the sad part. Saros is playing arguably the best hockey he's played in his career, and they're not getting wins. So at some point in time, his play's going to dip because it's an 82-game schedule. Will Nashville have enough goals to cover for it when that takes place? Number 28 this week. And dropping 5 spots from last week, Columbus. The Blue Jackets find themselves in the bottom row for the first time in a while. It's been coming for a few weeks. So they were 21, then 23, and now they're 28. So that's a drop of 7 spots in 2 weeks. Tonight's loss against Montreal was an ugly one. So for Columbus, they're back in the bottom row. And from the way they've been playing lately, I don't know if they're going to be out of the bottom row anytime soon. It's going to require multiple wins and impressive wins, too, for them to start moving back up the board. Number 27, actually moving up 2 spots this week from last week. Sharks. The Sharks are playing well. And again, tonight with Pittsburgh, they did fight their way back into that game. And they're never really out of any game, which is impressive. So while they're not getting the points, I think they're playing well. And this is where I tell people, wins and losses don't tell the whole story. So for me with San Jose, I think that's the right spot for them right now. I think they've done well in this road trip, and we'll see what happens with them in the upcoming weeks. But again, I do think the worst is behind the San Jose Sharks. No more 10-1 or 10-2 losses. Number 26, and moving up 5 spots this week, the Ducks. So there's another California-based team moving up. It is a good move for them. We'll see whether or not it's sustainable. The win over Detroit was kind of fun to watch, unless you're a Detroit fan, in which case you enjoyed it less. But yeah, it was kind of fun to see them get some goals last night. If they start getting the puck in the net a little more regularly, with Gibson and Dostal as their goaltenders, they should win more regularly as well. All right, number 25. Same spot as last week, Detroit. It might surprise Detroit fans they don't move down after losses to Anaheim and LA, but they almost moved down past Anaheim. They don't, but it's close. If they have another week like the week they just had, they very well could find themselves behind Anaheim. But for this week, Detroit is number 25. All right, number 24. Moving up 3 spots last week. So with Anaheim, the last time they moved up, I wanted to have like a Dostal puck. I was like, it's not really the Ducks, it's Dostal. In this case, it should be a Vejmelka puck because Utah played okay, but Vejmelka was very good and helps them get that win over Carolina, which was just insane because, 49 saves and all that. Utah moves out of the bottom row this week. We'll see whether or not they stay out of the bottom row in subsequent weeks. Number 23. And threatening to drop back into the bottom row. Threatening to. And with today's result, it's weird because Boston and St. Louis have had this going back and forth with one another. St. Louis gets their revenge for Boston having that 2-goal comeback the other night in St. Louis. So tit for tat, and now they won't see each other again until next season. But Boston, I'm looking for back-to-back good games from them, and I've been waiting for that for a while. We haven't seen it. There was the embarrassing loss to Dallas, so yeah, Boston slips down the board a little bit in this week's power rankings. Also dropping 2 spots from last week down to number 22 is Buffalo. Buffalo Sabres. Every time it looks like they've got it together, actually they dropped 7 spots. Sorry, it's 7 spots. I thought that was a 2. It's a 7. Because they were 15 last week. And it shows that Buffalo is very volatile. They had a great week, and then they had a bad week to follow up the great week. So for Buffalo, it's consistency of results. We haven't seen that, and there's definitely some pressure for Buffalo to make some changes soon. I don't know when those are coming, but they're going to have to figure this out because fans haven't seen a playoff game in Buffalo since 2011. So before there's doctors that have never seen a Buffalo playoff game, maybe they need to fix that and get that all straightened out. Number 21, moving up 3 spots from last week, and their fans will be thinking I forgot them, but I haven't, and that's Philadelphia. Philadelphia is 500. Philadelphia is 500 despite all of the doubts people have had about them, despite all of us knowing that they're in a rebuild, but it's a weird rebuild in that they've got a half-decent record, and they've managed to find ways to get points and wins. It's not always pretty, but it's worked for them. So whether it's the game they stole against Ottawa or tonight where they just outplayed Buffalo when they needed to, and Fedotov's looked pretty good. So all of a sudden things are looking all right with Philadelphia. We're not in the realm of them dreaming of a playoff spot yet, are we? I don't think so. All right, number 20. And dropping 1 spot from last week, St. Louis. So for the Blues, they do get the win over Boston, which prevents them falling further. Boston, of course, being 23rd on the board. So St. Louis drops the 1 spot to 20. And so they've gone from 14 to 16 to 19 to 20. It is a pretty steady drop for St. Louis on the power rankings, and it continues this week. Number 19. Moving up 3 spots from last week. Another team that's getting points. I don't know if they're playing that well, to be honest, but they're getting points, and it feels like Patrick Waugh started figuring things out, and so have the Islanders. So the Islanders move up a few spots this week, and if they have another week like the one they just had, they'll very likely be in the top 16 next week. The New York Islanders, they play the same game that they've played for years now, and it works. It works often enough to keep them in the playoff hunt and might end up seeing them in a wild card spot again this year, which would once again prove that Lou Lamoriello is a better GM than people give him credit for, I guess. Number 18, moving up 2 spots from last week, the Kraken of Seattle. So for Seattle, moving up a couple of spots, they've won, 4 in a row? They're getting the wins. They're slowly moving up. They're now back to NHL 500. They're back to, are they 1 game above 500? You guys know. But their record has definitely got better. They've been playing better, and so they move up a little bit in the power rankings, not a lot. So there may be some complaints about them not moving up further, but they move up this week. And they're back where they were 2 weeks ago, actually. They've gone from 19th to 18th to 20th to 18th. So maybe now we see them move into the top 16 next week. Number 17. And moving up one spot from last week and rounding out the bottom half of the board is Ottawa. I want Ottawa in the top half of the board. I want Ottawa to go on some kind of winning streak, but it just doesn't happen. They end up 500. They're right around that middle mark, and I don't know if they're going to be a playoff team at the end of the year, because every time it feels like they've got it figured out, that they take a step back again. So I don't put this on Travis Green either. I think he's doing everything he can to try to get this straightened out. But yeah, Ottawa's 17th this week. They do move up one spot from last week. So, bottom half of the board, this is where there's usually the least amount of discussion and concern. And if there's any concerns, you guys can let me know. But we move on to number 16. Number 16 this week, dropping 4 spots. Vancouver. Their home record is an issue. And yes, they got wins over Calgary and Chicago, but Chicago, they had to win that. Tonight, they weren't looking at moving up the board. They were looking at whether or not they were going to move down further. And so the win over Chicago prevents the move from moving down further. I want to see that consistent effort at home. The good news is it feels like Pettersson's taken that turn, but that loss against the Islanders, that's why they've dropped this week. And so we'll see if we get that consistent effort with them going forward. Tomorrow's game against Nashville could be very telling because Nashville's towards the bottom of the board as well. Number 15, and dropping 5 spots from last week, the LA Kings. So for the LA Kings, they have a very good record at home. Their record on the road has become a bit of an issue, and so it leaves LA right around the middle of the board. Even though their overall record is good, and they got the win tonight over Detroit. That, again, is a game they should win with where Detroit is on the board. So for the LA Kings, they come in at 15th this week. I do expect them to end up moving back up the board, though. Their defense is just too good. All right, that's number 15. Number 14. Same spot as last week for Calgary. The Flames are getting enough points to stay in the hunt and to stay above the line. And the longer that they can do this, the more it's going to put Craig Conroy in an interesting position where he might be a buyer later on in the season. And it might be smart for them to pick somebody up soon so that you're telling these guys, hey, I have faith that you might be able to make the playoffs. Let's see what we can do. Why not? I mean, if you're right there, why not? Why not? Give it a shot. So we'll see what happens with the Calgary Flames and whether or not they pick anybody up, but they stay in the same spot this week as last week, which is a surprise to me. Number 13, moving up 4 spots from last week. No crazy moves, but the Oilers moving up 4 spots is indicative that McDavid's playing better. Draisaitl's played well, especially since McDavid got hurt. The results are starting to line up. They're now 2 games above NHL 500. And I do feel like the Oilers are starting to become the team that we thought they were going to be at the start of the year. I do still have concerns about the goaltending and some defensive concerns as well. But the Oilers in general, looking pretty good lately. So they move up the board. Moving up 4 spots to number 12, Colorado. The Avs are healthy. They had a rough night last night. I take that to mean that you get all those players back in the lineup, and it's just going to throw everything off. I would expect them to get right back at it. That win they had against LA was very impressive, and so I'm kind of going on that. They are NHL 500 right now, but I don't expect them to stay there. I think they're going to be quite good. I do have the same goaltending concerns with Colorado, though, as I do with Edmonton, so maybe you trade Georgiev for Skinner, and that'll fix it, right? There you go. Number 12. Number 11 on the board this week, moving up 2 spots from last week, Tampa. Tampa's started to look good again. Tampa's very good at home. This is where they make up their points. This is where they move up the board. I don't know about contendership at this point, but they do move up a couple of spots. It was an impressive win they got tonight against New Jersey. That definitely helps them move up the board because remember, the Saturday night games are factored into this when I do the power rankings after all the games are done. So Tampa Bay, number 11 this week. Number 10, dropping 2 spots from last week. The Rangers are going to get back into the top row. I have no doubt in my mind. They're too good. Offense, defense, goaltending, everything is there. I think this is just one of those points where they're not necessarily playing as well as they had earlier in the season, but they're going to get it together. I have no doubt in my mind they're going to get it together. and we're going to see them back in the top row. I wouldn't be surprised if it's next week we see the New York Rangers in the top row. So they're number 10 this week because a couple of teams passed them, and so my lovely wife will place them in 10th spot as we get into the top 10. And now we finish out this row. Number 9 this week, moving up 2 spots from last week, Toronto. The Leafs slowly moving back up. Maybe they're in the top row next week. They're not quite there yet, but the consistency is getting better. And the best part of this, if you're a Leafs fan, is they're moving up the board in a week where Matthews didn't play a game. So they're winning without Matthews. I think Bobby McMahon's looked quite good. Morgan Riley's playing some solid hockey, and everybody knows I'm a big fan of Anthony Stolarz. So, yeah, Leafs at number 9, and Stolarz definitely playing a role there. Number 8, moving up 1 spot from last week. Definitely playing better, Dallas. Dallas gets the 7-2 victory over Boston, the 7-1 victory over Pittsburgh. Those are both near the bottom of the board. And then tonight, they eke out a 2-1 win over Minnesota, which was impressive. Otter was quite good in that game, and honestly, I've been impressed with how well Dallas has played, while Jason Robertson just isn't quite himself. So if Robertson can start getting points on the board and start looking like Jason Robertson, look out. This team could be the best team in the league if they can get everybody going at the same time, which can be tricky in November. Number 7, dropping 2 spots from last week, but coming off of a very impressive game against Colorado, Washington. The Washington Capitals staying in the top row. Last week they were number 5. The week before that, number 6. And the week prior to that, they were number 8. So for Washington, they've been right around that same spot. They are looking like a contender right now. I think Spencer Carberry has them playing the best hockey they have, I would say, since Barry Trotz left. And so I'm optimistic that Washington can stay maybe in the top row for a while longer. And at some point, we're going to see them get clawed back a little bit and drop down, but I don't think that's happening soon. Very impressive game against Colorado, just especially that third period. I always watch that third period to see if a team can hold down a team like Denver, Florida, Tampa at home. And if you can, that says a lot. And so the Capitals, they look quite good. Number 6, same spot as last week. The Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas isn't going away. They're just not. As much as there are some fans who would like to see Vegas fall out of the playoffs and all of that, it's not happening. And Dorofeyev has taken that next step, and a lot of their young players are looking pretty darn good. And their goaltending is good enough to win them games. That's really all you can ask. The goaltending's good enough. And so, yeah, Vegas ends up staying in the same spot as last week at number 6. Number 5. Moving up 2 spots from last week, the New Jersey Devils. The back-to-back wins in Florida moved them up the board. The loss tonight against Tampa Bay caused me to claw it back a little bit, but not a lot, because those back-to-back wins against Florida, very, very impressive. New Jersey looks every bit as good, I think, so far this year as I thought they would. And so now it's a matter of, they've played more games than everybody else too. So that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on. There's a lot of teams with games in hand, and in some cases a lot of games in hand. So as the season rolls along, we'll see how all these points that they've been getting, how well that keeps them at or near the top of their division, or just within shouting distance of the top of their division. But for right now, New Jersey looks quite good. Number 4. And dropping 1 spot from last week. I went back and forth on this. Minnesota drops 1 spot. They did lose 2 games this week. I felt like they played well against Dallas. The game against Chicago, I don't know what happened there. But at any rate, Minnesota didn't have a bad week in my opinion. They just got passed. And Minnesota's still 11-3-3. We'll see how this week goes and if they end up staying in the top row. Number 3. Also dropping 1 spot from last week, Florida. So I didn't punish Florida because they also destroyed Winnipeg tonight. So, yeah, they lost back-to-back against New Jersey. Then they beat up on Winnipeg. So they drop 1 spot. They don't drop further. And so number 3 this week, the Florida Panthers. we know Florida, Stanley Cup champions, defending champs, and all that. They're going to be very good all season. I will not be surprised when they're back at number 1. I won't be surprised if it happens soon. Number 2 this week, and dropping 1 spot from last week, the Winnipeg Jets. Back-to-back losses, and it's not just the back-to-back losses, it's how they lost those games. It is really difficult to keep going at the rate they're going. So I'm not surprised that Winnipeg's had a tough couple of games. When they come back home and play against Florida in that second half of the back-to-back, it'll be interesting to see how that goes for them and if it's a better result. But at this point in time, I think Winnipeg, number 2 this week, is the right spot for them. Okay, she didn't throw the puck at me. I wasn't sure because she didn't see where everybody was ranked before I started this video, so I didn't know how she was going to feel because her teams are at 2 and 4 this week and they were 1 and 3 last week. So it was a pretty good board for her last week. So that leaves number 1. Moving up 3 spots from last week, Carolina. The Carolina Hurricanes are playing some fantastic hockey, and they're winning in various ways. And tonight, Spencer Martin gets his first NHL shutout. They're doing it with the third string goaltender, and yeah, they're 11 and 4. They look fantastic. It's hard to find a flaw right now with the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, we can go over what the flaws are at some point, but I'm not going to tonight because they're number 1. So Carolina's number 1 on the power rankings. I believe that's the first time that's happened this season. And we'll see if they stay at number 1 for next week. So here you go. Go ahead and put that into the board. And then because people will ask, let me go ahead and zoom in. I'll zoom out just a little bit. There we go. I'll zoom in. There we go. So for people who say they can't see the pucks, there you go. There's your power rankings for November the 16th. And I'd like to thank my lovely wife for helping with today's power rankings because it's a lot of work putting those in the board. So that's going to give me more energy for tomorrow. So thank you guys so much for all your support as always. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.